Today we compare the exact same EV with two different wheel sizes, and we talk about looks, comfort, efficiency, and resulting range. We've had a replacement car for 2 weeks, plenty of time to compare this white car with the larger 19-inch wheels to our Kona 17-inch wheels. And because Hyundai, and in fact other brands, let you choose your wheel size, at the end I recommend which to go for depending on your situation. Okay, let's start with the looks. So looks are obviously very subjective, and one could argue that you may have not picked a Hyundai or a Kona for its looks, but sure, there's always elements of being a bit more sporty, a bit more aggressive, a bit more premium. BMW, for instance, gives you a choice of 17 to 20 inch on the iX1, but they kind of make you feel bad for choosing the smaller wheels, don't they? On an SUV, it might look a little bit awkward if the wheels are too small. Or is it pure marketing and wheels used to be much smaller than that and it was absolutely fine? Now, it was helpful that a number of you shared your opinion about whether 17 or 19 works best on this car, and actually, I was surprised with the results. Most of you said it doesn't matter, or in fact, the 17 looks better. But yeah, it's a little bit more utilitarian, I would think. And for me personally, I'm going to give the points to the 19-inch wheels. But do you buy the car for its looks, for the brand, for all other sorts of parameters? Right, so it's time to talk about comfort and ride in the Kona on the 17 versus the 19-inch. So we're now with the 17-inch wheels, and frankly, it's absolutely fine, it's comfortable, but on the UK roads, which are known not to be the best, not the smoothest, well, you have this feeling of floating sometimes. You can maybe see it right now, where, you know, it's so soft that you're almost bouncing very slowly in slow motion. Now, nothing very dramatic about it, nothing bad about it. And in fact, the more you speak about it, the more you're likely to feel it. But the reality, though, is I think when I tested the 19-inch wheels, I kind of liked it better in many ways. It felt a little bit firmer, which, of course, it's normally the case on those sportier wheels. But it's actually slightly better, I think, for the Kona. Now, it would be quite different on different cars. I also like the larger wheels on the Cupra Born, for instance. And on the BMW, I would be worried that it gets way too firm too quickly, because, of course, BMW is known to be quite sporty. And so I think it varies quite a bit depending on the cars, obviously. But back to the Kona, you can see it here now with some of the holes in the road. Nothing drastic, but you know, a little bit more bouncy, a little bit of a softer ride when it comes to the 17-inch. So if I had to make a pick, actually, just on quality of the ride, I think I would go for the 19-inch on the Kona. That's somewhat sad to say. I think that's the reality of getting that slightly better feel for when you're driving. Now, for the passengers, it might be a slightly different choice, however. It could well be that the passengers would want the softer, squishier ride, and that would, of course, come on the 17-inch wheels. Let's get to what we came for now. Efficiency. First, when we picked up the 19-inch wheel car, it was displaying horrible efficiency at just 2.9 miles per kilowatt hours. But who knows what the previous users did with it. This compares to 3.9 miles per kilowatt hours average on our blue car, the 17-inch, over 9,000 miles And that includes winter traveling and long trips and all of that. But let's not wrap up the video just yet. Over the 14 days with the white car, we drove 430 miles and achieved 3.80 miles per kilowatt hours. This was mostly commuting, running the local errands, but it also took us on the motorway. So nothing fancy, but at least now we're talking. What's the equivalent on the 17-inch? Well, over a similar period of time, immediately before and after getting the white car, we achieved 4.28 miles per kilowatt hours. That's 13% better efficiency. So there we have a number that's pretty much like for like, and it was a really similar mix, similar weather, similar trips, and always back to the same point. So correcting for anything that would be wind and elevation and all of that, right? So that's good, but we can do one better actually, because we can also compare on just the subset of those trips, just the work commutes. We can compare the same journeys, outbound, inbound, and that's 13 miles of suburban and then motorway, and the destination is actually at the higher elevation, slightly higher elevation. So you can see the outbound journey is going to be lower efficiency, and then the way back is going to be the better efficiency. And there we've got it time and time again. It's like blue car beats white car by some margin, and that margin is 16% both on the outbound and the inbound. Right, so there we have it. We have a range now between 13 and 16% for the how much you improve your efficiency with 17-inch versus 19-inch. Now, we've got one more thing to do on efficiency, and that is to check what the Hyundai brochure says. Well, it's very spooky how close we get to their numbers. Hyundai calls that 166 and 147 watt-hours per kilometer respectively, and we achieved 164 and 145 respectively on the 400 mile plus summary. So incredibly close. Not only that, but they also call out a 13% difference, and that's what we get on our summary as well. You can also check the numbers on WLTP, which is more or less the best possible range you could get, and they say it's either 319 miles or 282 miles, and guess what? That's also a 13% difference. So well done Hyundai, great indication in the brochure, pretty much matches real life in the spring, so your typical average situation, just doing a bunch of things with the car. Let's talk more about range now. We know we have a substantial improvement in the economy of the car, but now on top of that we've got a number. Let's use 13%. And does that matter? Does that significantly impact your range and duration of the longer trips? I'm not going to cover impact on the wallet because one, I've covered that at length when we talked about the iX1 and 25% change in efficiency. So check out that video if you're interested. But also two, frankly, I think there is always a tendency for everyone to love discussing saving a few pounds here and there when the reality of the bigger picture is that you're going to spend a lot of money on a car. So money can only be one lens. And today, let's focus on impact on the range, the duration of the trip. So, we've done a number of trips by now, typically 500 kilometers of distance, 300 miles, and more than 15 trips. In fact, if you want to know more about those, let me know in the comments. I've already covered 3 on video, so again, check out those videos. But let's use a typical example, London to Bristol and back within the same day. Why not? Well, that's a 160 mile, 250 kilometer trip one way. It took us 6 hours and 30 minutes of driving, which is pretty close to the Google indicated time of 3 hours one way when you adjust for some fumbling time for a parking space in Bristol. On the way back, we stopped right by the motorway for 14 minutes at the Ionity charger, and we got about 23 kilowatt hours of juice. Overall, We did it on 4.1 miles per kilowatt hours, which is pretty solid. And total cost, £15, 2/3 of which on the rapid charging, the rest at home, of course. So what would that look like on its larger wheeled brother? Applying our 13% difference, we'd be looking at 172 watt hours per kilometer, or 3.6 miles per kilowatt hours. That's way more middle of the pack on the efficiency leaderboard now. So charging would now go on for 22 minutes instead, and we need a top up of 33 kilowatt hours. I said I wouldn't talk about money, but there you have it. It'd be £20 for the ride now, since you're doing more of the expensive bit of charging. And that's inclusive of the subscription which we had at the time. All in all, you spend another 8 minutes, which frankly out of 7 hours, I suspect no one would scream about unless you've got the kids at the back. But even so, great opportunity to stretch their legs a bit longer, right? So on this example, I'd say it matters, but it's not night and day really. So, which setup is right for you? We promised a recommendation. If you prioritize comfort, efficiency, and a smoother or even a floatier ride, especially for long journeys or even daily commutes, then the 17-inch wheels are the way to go. That 13% bump in efficiency is absolutely real, and it translates to more range and less time at the charger. So, it's gonna be perfect if you're a long trip warrior, you want to take the car anywhere. If you're a taxi driver, of course you're trying to minimize your costs and reduce your time charging, or simply if you're trying to be a bit more of an eco-conscious driver, insofar as such a thing exists, of course. If you just want a plain 5-people carrier that gives you great range, including in the winter, again, this is it. And finally, if you're coming from an insanely efficient EV like the Hyundai, this is the one for you. Now, on the other hand, if you value slightly sharper handling, possibly sportier looks, and a bit more of a connected feel to the road, then I've got to admit the 19-inch wheels are a good proposition. They make the car feel more planted, and that's not bad. So this one is for if style matters, if you love a little bit more of that performance look, if you want to claim that you're in a, sports car, although remember, you're going to be carrying people in this thing, right? It's going to work particularly well if you're not going on those long trips, if you are really using it as a commuter car and you want all that comfort, but also kind of style matters when you're driving to work or taking the kids to school or whatever. Possibly you're a switcher from petrol to EV and you just wanted the same kind of comfort and looks. Well, I think that's a fine choice, frankly. Ultimately, it comes down to what you value most. Range and comfort or style and handling. Do let me know in the comments which one you'd pick and why. You know how I voted. I went for the 17-inch, but these are good choices either way. I hope you found that somewhat useful. If you did, press that like button, subscribe, and for now, thanks for watching and goodbye.